It's scarcely believable that the shocking IPP scandal continues under a Labour government. It's one of the most cruel, inhumane and monumental injustices of the past half-century. A scandal which has claimed the lives of more than 90 people serving these sentences in prison. A scandal which the last Justice Secretary described as a stain on our justice system. And you would be hard-pressed to find any parliamentarian to disagree. In fact, Lord Blunkett, the Labour Home Secretary who introduced the sentences, now regrets them.
There are times in life when you put your hands up. I got my part of it wrong.
IPPs, or imprisonment for public protection sentences, to give them their full title, were designed to be given to serious offenders whose crimes didn't warrant a whole life sentence. The problem is, IPPs were given out far more widely than initially anticipated, and in many cases they were given to people who had committed low-level crimes. If you're not already familiar with the IPP scandal, hold on to your seats.
Behind these bars is a man who has been in prison for 11 years for stealing a mobile phone.
It's unthinkable, isn't it? Yet it's happening in this country right now.
In any sensible world, spending 16 years in jail for stealing a flower pot seems ridiculous, yet it has happened here under what are called imprisonment for public protection sentences.
Perhaps not surprisingly, the UN Rapporteur for Torture has described IPP sentences as an egregious miscarriage of justice and psychological torture.
This is one of the most scandalous stories in the British justice system in a long while. The psychological effects on the individuals would amount, in my opinion, depending on an individual assessment, to psychological torture.
These sentences also likely breach Article 3 of the Human Rights Act, which protects people from torture and degrading treatment. Just think about that. IPPs were rightly abolished over a decade ago, but not retrospectively. And you'll be staggered to know that in March 2025, there were more than 2,500 people still serving these cruel and inhumane sentences from behind bars. And just think about this. If they had committed their crime just a day after indeterminate sentences were abolished, they would have been freed long ago.
I'd say that this is an injustice. I would say that the original intention had nothing to do with circumstances where people would be held way beyond the normal tariff.
To end this appalling injustice, the House of Commons Justice Select Committee has recommended a resentencing exercise take place, overseen by a panel of experts, for everyone still serving these sentences as the only way to address the unique injustice caused by the IPP sentence. But the Labour government has so far refused to engage with such an exercise.
Let me just say we are not considering a resentencing exercise for IPP prisoners because that would automatically release a number of people who we do not believe would be safe to release.
But it's simply not true for the Justice Secretary to say that a resentencing exercise would
automatically release a number of people who we do not believe would be safe to release.
The resentencing exercise recommended by the House of Commons Justice Select Committee would be overseen by a panel of experts who would explore how resentencing could happen in a timely way, but one that would not jeopardise public protection. So it doesn't mean the
automatically release.
Well, now the government is being given another chance to end this monstrous injustice once and for all by adopting a plan drawn up by Lord Thomas, the former Lord Chief Justice. An expert working group convened by Howard League and led by Lord Thomas has come forward with considered proposals aimed at protecting the public whilst ending the long-running IPP scandal. The working group's report puts forward 6 recommendations, the most important of which is a change to the parole board test, which would require the parole board to give people on IPP sentences a certain release date within a 2-year window and to set out what action is required to achieve that safely. Setting a date of up to 2 years provides a long period of time to enable professionals and statutory agencies to work together and help the person to prepare for a safe release. It completely knocks on the head any argument the Justice Secretary has previously raised about public safety, and will end once and for all one of the most cruel and monumental injustices of the past half century.
In short, if we fail to act now, we face the collapse of the criminal justice system and a total breakdown of law and order.
With our prisons at breaking point, surely now is the time for James Timpson, the prisons minister and Labour peer, to accept Lord Thomas's sensible, workable and detailed plan and seek to close this shameful chapter in the history of British criminal justice. And if the Justice Secretary refuses to sign off on the plan for fear of handing ammunition to ignorant critics who might accuse her of being soft on crime, the Prime Minister, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, someone who understands the criminal justice system better than any minister, should intervene and instruct her to act on the proposals. Because the simple fact is that by refusing to do so, Keir Starmer's government would itself become responsible for allowing one of the most cruel, inhumane and monumental injustices of the past half century. A scandal rightly described as a stain on our justice system, described by the UN Rapporteur for torture as an egregious miscarriage of justice and psychological torture, and which likely breaches Article 3 of the Human Rights Act, to be continued and perpetrated. And I, for one, cannot believe that is what a Labour government would want to happen.